I had the idea of doing a sort of an opening blurb of reverse words like Zatanna and her spells, but it's too much work. So Justice League Dark, it has been a while since I have come back to DC animated films, and they have been up and down a bit recently. Basically, the short version is the ones that have been best in the last 3 years or so have been the ones devoid from the New 52 based continuity that they did. So, things like Son of Batman, Throne of Atlantis, Justice League War, all those interconnected ones I have really hated. And not to say that everything that was divorced I liked. Killing Joke had problems, but most of the ones that weren't part of that have been good. I liked Assault on Arkham, Gods and Monsters, Return of the Caped Crusaders. So this Justice League Dark, I was nervous about, but I was still kind of hopeful for, because I knew, even though it was part of that continuity that I don't like, it was not involving these versions of the Justice League that I don't like at all. So knowing that it was focusing on other characters, I thought maybe it'll still work, because that was part of how Batman Bad Blood actually kind of worked, because it wasn't dealing with Batman himself very much. And yeah, that's pretty much the case. I was pleasantly surprised by this. It was kind of a relief. I miss enjoying these movies. So this was good for me. I had a lot of fun with this. I don't know a lot of these characters particularly deeply, but I do have a surface level knowledge of a lot of them. And I like a lot of them. I like Constantine. I love that they got Matt Ryan back to do it again, because I liked the Constantine TV show. I wasn't in love with it, but I liked it. I was sorry to see it go after only one season. So it was nice to get him back. Fun fact, the guy who voiced Richie, also reprising his role from the TV show. On that note, I almost kind of wish they could have brought back the guy who played Felix Faust on the TV show. But to be fair, this version of Felix Faust is way different than he was in the TV show, from the ground up as a character. So, that's fine. So, the other characters, we got Zatanna, we got Swamp Thing, we got Deadman, we got this weird thing on Black Orchid. I gotta look that up and see if that take on Black Orchid is completely original or has some basis somewhere that I just missed. So we've got all these magic users, and then there's Batman thrown in the mix, and that I was really nervous about, because I have not been a huge fan of Jason O'Mara as Batman. But you know what? They found the perfect way to use him in this story. There's actually a recurring gag, and I loved it, which was that something insane would happen, and Batman would just kind of stand there and go, and that I laughed every time. Even when I saw it coming, I laughed. That was great. And that was a really good use for Batman. And most of the rest of the Justice League cameo appearances at best, and that's good as far as I'm concerned, because as I said, not a big fan of how they've been depicted in these movies thus far. Now, I probably am going to get into spoilers a little bit. I'll try and hold back and not get into it too much. So there's all the characters I mentioned. There's a few others in there as well. We've got the Demon, which means we've got Jason Blood, who has a great line, and I think the perfect description of John Constantine. He describes him as the man who perfected the bad idea. That's great. I love that. So we get some background on some of these characters, others not so much. I think we got maybe a little more background than was needed on some of them. So we get some of the Demon's background in history and how he got linked to Jason Blood, and that makes sense because there's aspects of that story that tie into other stuff going on. So that works okay. I don't know why we got a detailed description of Boston Brand and Deadman's origin. And on that note, I think Deadman's kind of the dead weight here. He's not useless in terms of a story function. He didn't really work for me. The accent's really overblown, and I think they try to make him intentionally irritating, but that's always a slippery slope, because it's really hard to make a character who's irritating to the other characters without having them also be irritating to the audience, and the guy's a little grating. And this thing is also very action heavy. Now, that's been a point of criticism by me for a lot of these movies recently, but it's different here, because the reason I've criticized the action heavy stuff before in something like Justice League War, and certainly the more grounded stuff like Batman vs. Robin, is that it was boring. It was just punching, and when you're doing animation, I want something more inventive than that. You get a bunch of magic logic users doing these insane things. And yes, the action is fun and exciting and inventive, and that makes it enjoyable. That makes it viscerally exciting. And even though there's a couple of the action beats, I'm like, that was unnecessary. I wasn't overly annoyed with it because it was still interesting to watch. So all that worked. The imagery for the demons was really good. It was really creepy. I think you can probably pick up the notes of where the story's going, and there's a little bit of mystery involved, and it's not that hard to figure out or call either. So I'm not sure the story is quite as clever as it thinks it is, but the story isn't necessarily. I would have liked something a little bit more, I don't know, unexpected, twisty, what have you, but the story was solid enough that it allowed the other stuff, like the good voice casting, like the inventive action, to shine the way that it needed to shine. Again, this thing isn't perfect, it's not upper echelon, but certainly for the recent output that the DC animated films have been giving us, this was a good, solid time. I had a lot of fun with it, and I wasn't sure that I was going to. So this was a relief, and I wish I could say that it means I'm going to be hopeful for the Teen Titans Judas contract. Unfortunately, I'm not, because I hate Damian Wayne as Batman so much. Yeah, I can't bring myself to be hopeful for that, but I'm still going to check it out when I get to it. Obviously, this film has been out for a little while. It took me a while to get to it, but I'm happy to have watched it. I enjoyed it. It reminds me that, you know, not everything is going to be as brilliant as Gods and Monsters was, which was awesome, but it's just nice to feel like the baseline of, like, this is your standard. I just want it to get raised again, because this feels about on par with something like Justice League Doom, or maybe even the Flashpoint Paradox, maybe a little bit below that one. But it feels more akin to that than, you know, the recent DC output. So good stuff. I enjoyed it. Have you seen Justice League Dark? What were your thoughts on it? Whatever they were, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks or the Punch Like a Girl podcast, both available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.